Hello, fellow Star Wars fans. My name is Star Raptor, and welcome to the channel. This is my spoiler-free review for Star Wars: The High Republic Convergence, written by Zoraida Cordova. She is no stranger to Star Wars writing because she is the author of A Crash of Fate, which is based on Batuu, Galaxy's Edge. But we're not talking about that today. We're talking about The High Republic Phase 2, in which this takes place, called Quest of the Jedi, which, if you are taking notes, is 150 years before the events of Phase 1, Light of the Jedi, and about 350 years before the events of The Phantom Menace, making this the first chronological book in the adult section of the Star Wars books in canon. So pretty big deal there. So what's the story about? Okay, this is about the Forever War. You have these planets called Eiram and E'ronoh, and they might sound familiar because later on in Phase 1, that's going to be where the Starlight Beacon is based around those two planets. They're sister planets. They have a little moon, and they are warring constantly. For the last 5 years, they've had a brutal war, and they've even had conflicts that stretch out before that. So you have the ceasefires. We open up this book, there's a ceasefire. It's been going on for 3 days, which is breaking new ground. They've never had a record of a 3-day ceasefire in the last 5 years. And you have the regents of E'ronoh named the matriarch, and you also have the queen of Eiram, and they also have kids that are along there, right? So you have the princes and the princess, and there's this big feud that's going on. But these wars been going on for so long that both planets have stressed their resources very, very thin. So you have this kind of like demilitarized zone, if you will, which, does that sound familiar to our own planet? Yeah, it's because Star Wars always takes that modern stuff and blends it into their own storytelling, and we get that definitely here. But you have these big cultures, and they're trying to get these resources, but then you have pirates that are striking these resources. So it is a mess, and it's getting to the point where Eiram and E'ronoh is actually causing the hyperlanes around this Outer Rim territory to get straight, really get tightened up, and it's going to affect the rest of the galaxy with this war that's just been going on and going on and going on. So anyway, you have the Jedi that are going in, Gel and Natai, and the rest of her Jedi contingent, and then you also have the Republic. You have the counselors, or the chancellors, if you will. You have a chancellor on Coruscant, Greylark, and you have a chancellor in the Outer Rim, this Quarren named Malo. So it's the first time we're hearing about in canon that there's actually two simultaneous different chancellors. So they're trying to get help to these planets, and that's where the story really takes place, because it just keeps going and going. You get a lot of suspense. It becomes like a murder mystery, and it goes on and on, on and on, with lots of suspenseful moments in this. So let's talk about characters, because one of the bright spots of this book is one of the titular characters named Axel Greylark, who is the son of the Chancellor of the Republic that resides in Coruscant, his mother, Greylark. And, well, he's a very interesting character, because at surface level, he's your Han Solo archetype, right? He is the bad boy. He's going there to these like crime-ridden places on Coruscant, gambling with money from his mother and all this kind of stuff. But we find out that he has a lot more layers to this character than what looks at first sight. So he's one of my favorites. But you also have the characters of the children of the royalty of both Eiram and E'ronoh. And you have this interesting character named Fantu, and he is the adopted son of the queen and the queen consort of Eiram. So it's very interesting, like found family. That whole message with Star Wars has been around before, but it's cool to see his development. And you also have the daughter of the matriarch of E'ronoh, and the people of E'ronoh are a lot more warlike. So you have this guy that just wants to get revenge for his son that got killed on Eiram, and that's why he doesn't let go with bombarding them with these drill ships and all. But then you have this princess who happens to also be the captain of the starfighter fleets there for E'ronoh. So they're much more warlike people, and you get to see how her barriers are starting to break down to be more conducive to working with Eiram, whereas her father and the father's people are more extremists, and they don't want that to happen. So you have a lot going on with her. And then you have Jella Natai, who is the Jedi, and she's her Jedi perspective in this. What I like is just seeing the tension and the overall scope of how of how they are able to create this planet. Zoraida Cordova makes these planets very well lived in. You get to see the cultures very, very specifically, what's going on, what separates these people from the other people. I loved seeing how, for instance, E'ronoh is a lot more of like an isolationist people. They do not want anybody to interfere with their culture. They're not part of the Republic, neither is Eiram, but it's really a neat idea to see that. I think there's so much context in this story for what happens in phase 1. It makes sense they started off here. It's a lot more small scale compared to, let's say, the opening adult novel for phase 1, Light of the Jedi, written by Charles Soule, was a lot more galaxy spanning. You get all these different characters, where phase 2 so far, between Path of Deceit and Quest for the Hidden City and now Convergence, we're seeing the scope is a lot more dialed in, a lot more specific, but in doing so, we're getting a lot more of these characters and really getting into their lives, which is interesting. I love the pacing of this book. It is fantastic. Like I said, a lot of murder mystery going on. There's lots of action spread throughout. Just the dialogue, everything seems impactful. There weren't really any chapters that I felt kind of lagged behind or anything like that. A lot of great themes, like duty is a big theme in this. Putting aside the past, working past your differences, working past your parents, your father, your mother, whatever, their animosities toward the other people, trying to turn a new leaf. Like I said, the isolationist kind of stuff here. This book felt a lot like The Phantom Menace for me, because as I didn't mention yet, there is a shadowy figure that's in the background that's causing these planets to fight each other this whole time. Their whole agenda, this shadowy person, is trying to keep this stoked, trying to keep this fire stoked of these warring countries causing havoc for the galaxy. So for all those, I think this book is fantastic for that. The one negative I have to say is the titular main character that's on the cover, Gela Natai. I'm not really sure how to pronounce the character, but she is as stoic of a Jedi as you will come across, to the point where she was quite frankly boring. I don't think there was a lot of substance here for her, because she was just such a straight-laced Jedi. And if that is what Zoraida Cordova was going for, then she nailed it. But as a reader, I was expecting to get a little bit more from her. I just didn't feel like I really seen a lot of development from her from when we first seen her to the end. She wasn't really put through a lot of the paces that I would expect for a character to grow from. There was lots of cool situations, lots of cool moments with her, but I just don't know how I feel about her as a character. And that could be kind of extrapolated into more of the book. Like Axel Greylog for me, standout character, one of my favorite characters in the High Republic, I can say already, and that's comparing also to phase 1 too, mind you. And there's a lot of great characters in that. But I feel like a lot of the other characters kind of melded into the story. They served more the story as a plot rather than characters. So for that being said, I'm going to give this book an 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed this. This book is great coming off of phase 1. It did not end as well for the adult books as it did for me. Granted, this is a new phase. I don't want to compare things too much, but I did really want to like this book, and I did, because I wasn't the biggest fan of Crash of Fate, as I mentioned off the top of the video, her previous book. I was not a big fan of that. It's young adult, but I think that Zoraida Cordova does a great job with writing an adult Del Rey novel for Star Wars that is going to be a great starting point for showing how the galaxy kind of expands. And I will let you guys know that if you have the opportunity, please go ahead and read Path of Deceit first, because you're going to get a lot more context, since that book does extrapolate on certain characters that pop into this book. As you know, it's the High Republic. There's a lot of connective tissue, but certainly I feel like there's more connective tissue between this book and Path of Deceit than there was between Light of the Jedi and Into the Dark, if you know what I'm saying. So definitely recommend this one. What'd you guys think of this review? Let me know in the comment section down below. For more on Star Wars The High Republic, since phase 2 is already out, you can check my reviews for Quest of the Hidden City, for the Marvel comics, for the IDW, or not even IDW anymore, Dark Horse High Republic Adventures. I put up my review of that earlier this week, and even the young adult novel I was talking about, Path of Deceit, I have a review for that. So go out there, check that out. If you have a friend that's in the High Republic and wants to know more, then you know how to refer them. Just tell them youtube.com/StarRaptor and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. That's good to do for me, Starper. Thank you so much for watching, and may the Force be with you always. Thanks for checking out the video. Please hit that thumbs up symbol. It helps me know that I'm making content that you guys enjoy. And if you enjoyed this video, I also include 2 videos down below you guys should check out. And please consider subscribing to this channel. It helps support me and it notifies you guys of when I get new videos up on the channel. You can also contact me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram @StarRaptor.